So, what if literally everything you believe about money is just a myth? Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking the epic, cinematic evolution of human currency. We're going to take a journey together, starting way back with ancient credit ledgers all the way up to the dawn of our modern economy. And spoiler alert, the story of how money actually began, it's wildly different from what we've all been taught. For centuries, orthodox economics, basically tracing all the way back to Adam Smith, has fed us a very specific story. The story goes that humans started out by bartering physical goods, swapping a sack of wheat for a pair of shoes, right? And then, supposedly, we invented money just to make those trades easier. Well, according to anthropologist David Graeber, that whole idea is a historical illusion. It turns out barter was virtually non-existent in close-knit early communities. No way, right? So instead of these awkward barter systems, early communities actually operated on highly sophisticated networks of mutual obligation. Graeber refers to this as everyday communism. Picture this. In places like Sumer, around 3500 BCE, long before a single coin was ever minted, people were logging credit agreements on clay tablets. It's fascinating because it means trust and debt are actually the true ancestors of money.
Okay, let's move into Chapter 2, the rise of commodity money. From those invisible credit ledgers, we transition into the era of physical assets, right, as communities started trading across borders.
This shift brilliantly illustrates how cowrie shells, which were harvested in the warm waters of the Indian Ocean, became one of the world's first truly global currencies. It's like a giant puzzle, but this tiny, durable shell adapted to wildly different local economies, and it was driven entirely by scarcity. On the coast, well, they bought very little, but if you move them inland to, say, 19th century Kano, their purchasing power was absolutely immense. It just goes to show that money doesn't have to be shiny metal. It literally just has to be universally trusted. Which brings us to Chapter 3, Coins and Imperial Debasement. As empires started to expand, taxation required standardized money. Rulers began demanding taxes in specific state-issued currencies, and this led to the invention of coins.
But what followed was essentially a slow-motion economic disaster. You see, to fund these massive war debts, reconstruct Rome, and of course, build lavish palaces, emperors systematically drained the silver right out of their own currency. It started with Nero. He cut the denarius down to 94% purity. Then, by 269 AD, under Claudius II, the standard coin was a pathetic 2% silver. 2%. Rome was just watering down its money supply, which, as you might guess, triggered absolutely catastrophic hyperinflation.
And this actually brings us to a really foundational rule of money. When governments water down their money supply, the public catches on quickly. People aren't foolish, right? Citizens just started hoarding the older pure silver coins. They were melting them down or saving them under the mattress, and they only used the new, debased copper-filled coins for their everyday shopping. We call this Gresham's Law. Simply put, bad money drives out good. We saw it happen in Rome, and we saw it all over again during the Great Debasement in 16th century England.
Fast forward a bit, and we hit Chapter 4, the paper money revolution. By the 11th century, the heavy iron coins used in Song Dynasty China had become dangerously cumbersome for merchants to carry around. Now, just as Rome showed us the huge dangers of unbacked debasement, the Song Dynasty mastered the exact opposite. They successfully engineered the world's very first standardized paper money, known as the jiaozi, and they did it right. They backed it with an explicit reserve of copper coins, maintaining a super strict 28% reserve ratio. On top of that, they mandated that half of all taxes had to be paid in paper. This was a genius move because it guaranteed permanent demand for the new currency. Centuries later, in 1694, Europe finally caught up. Needing to fund a massive war against France, the British Crown chartered the Bank of England. The bank started issuing these handwritten running cash notes. And here's the kicker: these notes were made payable to the bearer on demand. That meant anyone holding the piece of paper could walk in and exchange it for physical gold. This idea spread like wildfire, acting as the true forerunner to the modern cash sitting in your wallet right now. Moving on to Chapter 5, the Gold Standard Era. As the Industrial Revolution caused global trade to absolutely explode, those paper receipts needed a universally trusted, constraint-based anchor.
Initially, America really struggled with this clunky bimetallic system set up by Alexander Hamilton. It tried to peg the dollar to both gold and silver at a 15-to-1 ratio. But because global market prices were constantly shifting, Gresham's law struck again. People just hoarded whichever metal was undervalued at the time. Finally, the Gold Standard Act of 1900 stabilized the whole shebang by legally transforming the US dollar into a literal paper claim on physical gold. $1 equaled exactly 23.22 grains of fine gold. It was this beautiful, self-correcting system, and it strictly constrained exactly how much money the government could print.
But as history shows us time and time again, governments really do not like constraints, especially during wartime. Welcome to Chapter 6, The Shift to Fiat.
Under the Bretton Woods Agreement, the entire global economy was pegged to the US dollar, and the dollar was pegged to gold. Simple enough, right? Well, economist Robert Triffin recognized a fatal structural flaw in this setup. It's known as the Triffin dilemma. To fuel global trade, the United States was basically trapped into exporting endless amounts of dollars. But mathematically, the more paper dollars they sent abroad, the more obvious it became that they absolutely did not have enough physical gold to actually back them all up.
Think about this. The entire global monetary system rested on one single promise. The United States would exchange 1 ounce of gold for exactly $35. That was the foundational peg. But because of that Triffin dilemma, combined with the massive spending required by the 1960s, well, it became a promise the U.S. simply could no longer keep.
And so, the trap finally snapped shut. Facing a very real potential run on the gold reserves at Fort Knox by foreign nations, President Richard Nixon went on national television in 1971 and abruptly closed the gold window. The Nixon shock completely severed the dollar's link to gold. Practically overnight, the entire planet was forced onto a system of unbacked fiat money. From that moment on, a dollar or a euro or a yen, it had value not because it represented some shiny metal in a vault, but simply because the issuing government said it did.
Which brings us to today. From the intricate credit ledgers of ancient Sumer to cowrie shells traded across vast oceans, to the silver denarius of Rome, and finally to this modern fiat system we use right now, money has never stopped evolving. It's an incredible story of technology, power, and above all else, human trust. As we operate entirely on a system of unbacked fiat today, it leaves us with one massive provocative question. What will we choose to believe in next?